Hello. My name is Vince Ketlubeck. I'm CEO and co-founder of a business in Santa Fe, New Mexico called Meow. I pause for a second when I say business because we haven't always been a business. We are definitely one now. We're like an arts production company, produces large-scale, immersive, interactive art. But we didn't start off like that. We actually started off just as like a group of friends, a collective, sort of like a clubhouse, back in 2008. We were pretty much operating out of like a warehouse, 900 square feet, pretty much no insulation, too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter. And we were a bunch of 20-somethings that were just trying to kind of survive together and try to find a venue to express ourselves through. And we were like young artists who really didn't have any other outlet. And so we said, okay, we're just gonna like rent our own spot. And we're gonna stop waiting for the world to invite us to participate in what they got going on. We're just gonna like do it ourselves. So we ended up just like renting this place, and we'd go into dumpsters and we'd pull out any materials we could find. We had no money. We're like working like restaurant jobs, hotel jobs during the day, and then we'd get off and we would then like go to the Salvation Army and see what they could donate to us so that we could go and make these weird, colorful installations inside of our space. And it wasn't about making money. It wasn't about business or customer acquisition or any of that. It was actually kind of all about making forts. It was sort of the thing that we wanted to do. We were just a bunch of 20-something children wanting to just be fort builders. And we were building forts out of really weird materials, really gross materials. And then we would open these shows, and we would open the shows to the public, and we would invite the public to come experience these spaces that we were creating. And we actually found that people were like enjoying the things that we were creating. Kids were loving it. They were crawling around on floors that they probably shouldn't have been crawling around on. Again, it wasn't about business, but at the end of the night, we would have like a little donation box, and maybe we would make $100 at the end of the night, which we would then like quickly spend on booze or weed. A lot of crawling, a lot of narrative, sort of storytelling stuff, made it feel like you're in another world, another environment. And this went on for a while, 2 or 3 years. No hierarchy. I was like kind of the leader of it, but there was really no leader. It was just kind of chaos. And then 3 or 4 years into it, we ended up making this project. This was a giant ship called the Do Return. And we built this. It was the first project we did that like had real integrity to it, had like actual architectural plans and engineering and money, about $50,000 that we raised. But we worked on it all as volunteers and ended up building it inside of a larger space that another gallery in Santa Fe had donated to us. And we worked on it for a year. Again, like no thought about money or business. It was really just about like how do we express ourselves and how do we work together to create something that is meaningful to us and meaningful to the world. And it was cool. You could go in, you could like explore the ship. The ship had this fictional narrative to it. You could kind of go through different spaces and learn about various characters. And it was kind of open world exploration. And we really had no idea like how people were going to take this project. And when it opened in 2011, it became the most popular art exhibit that had ever existed in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we had kids of all ages. We had people who normally wouldn't set foot in a museum, people who only spoke Spanish, people who were just like totally, usually like alienated by art in general, now coming in and checking out our space. But taking the leap from that in 2011 to where we are now took a lot of work and took kind of a miracle. I had saw this sort of potential with the amount of people that came to see the ship. I saw this potential that like a business could exist here. And so I kind of put together a business plan, and I ended up pitching it to this guy, who's the author of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. He lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I happened to be employed by him at one time at his movie theater as his marketing director. And so I said, hey, George, dude, there's this old bowling alley. You should buy this old bowling alley, and we'll do this crazy project in it, and it's going to blow people's minds, and it's going to change the world, and it's going to change the world of art. And he's like, no thanks. And I went back to him and I said, come on, man, we're going to make this happen. So he ended up saying yes. He decided to buy the bowling alley. And at the same time, I went to, I have no business background. I have no actual like education in business. But I went to do this thing called Creative Startups. It was like a startup accelerator. And it was my first time ever actually thinking about business. And I learned when I was doing Creative Startups, like what entrepreneurship is. Like growing up, like I always sort of just imagined that all of my like fights with my teachers, all of my run-ins with the law, like I just thought that I was a criminal, but it turned out that I was an entrepreneur. And this is what taught me that, which was really sweet. So I was like, we ended up working on this project. We raised $2.7 million in 12 months. This is going from having never even employed anybody before, never even writing a check, never even keeping a bank account, to then raising $2.7 million in debt to make this crazy project happen. And this is in 2015. So we drew some nice little pieces of concept art. We got scrappy with recycled materials. It's all built to code. We had to learn that whole process, architecture and engineering. It took us about 14 months to produce it. We had about 150 people on payroll. And in March of 2016, we ended up opening the house, what's called the House of Eternal Return, which is a 20,000 square foot space in Santa Fe, New Mexico, inside of that bowling alley that welcomes 500,000 visitors a year now to experience it. And it's people of all ages. It's people of all backgrounds. It's 50% people from out of state. It's the #1 attraction in the state of New Mexico. It's the most Instagrammed attraction in the state of New Mexico. It's one of the most successful museums. It is the most successful museum in the state of New Mexico. And it's completely taking the art world by storm, because for the first time, there's a whole audience out there that is experiencing creativity in a way that they'd never felt comfortable experiencing before, because of the context that we display it in. We do 500,000 visitors a year in a city that is only 110,000 people population, with a 1.1 million 3-hour drive market, 1.5 million annual tourists. This is what we learned. We've learned that foot traffic is incredibly powerful. I think everybody here knows that. If you can get somebody to show up to something, especially this day and age, and have them actually be impressed with what they're showing up to, then you got something good on your hands. And the whole world, the whole built world out here is in desperate need to compete with the digital world. That's another thing that we learned. The people are bored by the outside world. It can't keep up with our phones. It can't keep up with the internet. It's too much good content on our internet. And so the world out there is boring. So if anybody can do interesting things out there, it's going to be a home run. And people don't just like love Meow Wolf. They are like minds blown, like spiritual level experiences. Like I walked into Meow Wolf and my life was transformed sorts of reviews. It's the type of reviews that you really can't generate. I mean, it's got to come from an authentic and organic place. A place that is rooted in passion, meaning, purpose, culture, not something that's fabricated by a marketing agency. So the House of Eternal Return, I'll show you pictures of the project. It basically spend $25, you open a door, and you're at the front yard of a house. At this point forward, customers can go any direction that they want to go in. There's no guides, there's no maps. It's totally up to them to decide what they do, where they go, how they do it. That alone is mind-blowing to people because they're so used to a world that tells them exactly what to do at all times. And so even the feeling of agency, even the feeling of like choice is mind-blowing, you know? It's like, I can open that door? Really? I can touch the art? I can stand on the couch? And it's like, we don't do anything, we just let them walk around. Most people then end up just going into the front door and they start exploring this family's life, this fictional family's life that lives in this house. You can look at pictures, you can look at photo albums, read their journals, postcards, kind of learn about like what happened to them. There's an event that occurred. And you can explore more, you can go to their bedrooms, their bathroom, look in the toilet. There's a funny thing in the toilet. You get to the dining room table or dining room and you see that like things are kind of wonky, something's happened here. And then you get to the fridge, and this is like the big transformative moment for everybody. You open the fridge and it's not a fridge, it's actually a secret passageway. It's a rip in time and space that takes you to another dimension. And this is where the experience really goes off the rails. And if we've learned anything, I would say, as a company, it's that people desperately want to walk through their household appliances. This is like a deep-seated need in our lives because we're bored and stuck and feel trapped, and we just wish that we could like get out. So they can go through the fridge, they can go through the dryer, and then they end up in this like fantastic other world. The house itself is about 2,000 square feet. The rest of the exhibit is 18,000 square feet. So you can imagine just how much more sort of crazy, psychedelic, artful, creative spaces you can then go through. You can go up and down, you slide through things, climb things, get inside of tree houses. You're just basically in just like a fictitious, weird environment, sharing it with other people. And you spend about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You can spend as long as you want. You know, you can come all day if you'd like. There's a lot of interactive musical instruments that people play. There's performers sometimes that show up. We really want to just like provide creative experiences to people. It's a genuine interaction. You know, it feels like, it's like we don't have to sell much. We're just saying, hey, look at what we created, and then letting people walk around and experience it. We also have a music venue. So this is a 400-person music venue that's within the context of the exhibition. And so we decided, like, if we have space, why not also use that space for other things? So like during the day from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. or whatever, it's filled with families and kids who think it's the coolest children's museum, basically, that they've ever been to. And then at night, it turns into like a party with 21 plus and drinking and debauchery. Again, like we're not coming from this from a perspective of a business, you know? Though business is definitely something that derives from what we do. We also have a bar, so we started our own bar called Float. And we operate and run our own bar. I've never operated a bar before, so that's another piece to the whole thing. We throw music festivals. Through Music Festival last year, we are now creating an amusement park ride for an amusement park in Denver called Elitch Gardens, because it's something that we want to do. It's not necessarily our business strategy. It's not necessarily like what our core competency is. We've never built a ride before, but how freaking cool is it to get to build a ride? We hosted a video game championship. We're really into Galaga and retro video games, so we hosted a world championship for Galaga, and also produced a documentary called Meow Origin Story and self-released it, kind of direct to consumer. And we've gotten a ton of coverage for what we've done, because at the heart of what we're doing is culture. At the heart of what we're doing is movement, it's message, it's purpose. It's something deeper than just profit. And the news media, earned media, takes notice to that. Earned media is not going to write you an article if they know that all you're doing is doing something for profit. That's called advertising. They want you to spend your advertising dollars in their publication for that. So, but they're totally down to write articles about us when it's about a bunch of other things other than just money. And then, of course, that becomes advertising for us. So we've had 3.5 billion impressions in 2018, and that's off of a marketing spend of $300,000. We made $14 million in 2018 off of marketing of $300,000. We were voted the number 4 thing to do in the world by USA Today, and recently had a big article that came out that was Meow, the insane art collective that's taking over the world. We're expanding into other markets now. Denver, Vegas, DC, and Phoenix are the 4 places that we're expanding, that we've announced thus far. Trying to bring similar, like, big scale, crazy, lunatic, creative experiences to people. And over the course of the next 5 years, we hope to do 15 projects across the country. That's our growth strategy. We employ 450 people now, full-time, in Santa Fe, looking to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to get these projects done. And this is all in a matter of like 3 or 4 years, you know? It's just been like riding a crazy rocket ship. But I feel like in a lot of ways, we're kind of coming about it from an outsider's perspective. And we're thinking about like what's the core, what's the source energy that is driving the company? And it's not even company. What's the source energy that's driving the momentum, you know? And like tending to that and feeding it. And then like letting business wrap around and marketing wrap around that, you know? So we create content, entertainment content, and can distribute through like your normal distribution channels. But then because of foot traffic, we can also just create our own direct-to-consumer entertainment distribution platform because we already have 500,000 people coming through our doors on an annual basis in Santa Fe. And after Denver and Vegas and DC and Washington and Phoenix, that will be like 5 million people coming through our doors on an annual basis. So we now have a dedicated consumer base that is committed to our brand. And we're not trying to sell them any of this. It's all based on their choice. We're not advertising at them. We're giving them the opportunity to participate. This is all a bunch of other gibberish. We'll skip through. This is an example of how we how we think about our brand as also kind of offshooting other brands. So there's an artist who did a room inside of the House of Eternal Return. His name's Nico Salazar. And he basically just muraled a room of all of his characters. And people started taking pictures of it and Instagramming it. We went to Nico and we said, hey man, like people really love your room. Do you want to create a brand out of it? And he's like, yeah, totally. So we ended up helping him design a bunch of pieces of merchandise called Future Fantasy Delight. And you know, based on people's direct sort of engagement on Instagram with his room. And now we're creating an animated show with his work. And sort of doing Disneyland backwards, you know, instead of starting with content and then creating location-based, we're creating it starts with the place itself and then derives out from there. So I think people are oversaturated with content, you know? There's like way too much content in the world. There's not enough cool places to go. And so if you can capture a cool place and then have that be the thing that kind of grabs at a person's heart, because they're not used to being in cool places. But they're used to getting bombarded with content, you know? So if you try to play the content game by like just doing content, it's gonna get drowned out in the mass sea of content that's out there. Whereas spaces stand out. We also created this product called Experience Tube. Another artist of ours who had this idea. And like, we call it an analog social media device. So it's a way to be able to interact with each other without being distracted by your phone. One person puts one end on their head, and it lets you kind of like look into the eyes of somebody, you know, and like really focus. So we made this product, and it ended up on the Today Show. It's crazy, but like 2 months after the product got released, it's like, Kathy Lee is having a hard time wearing it on the Today Show. I actually put, like every dollar I spent on the Experience Tube was spent as a marketing expense. Like, I just kept on telling my board and the rest of the team, like, no, we're gonna do this. It's gonna cost us maybe, like, I don't know, $25,000 to do this product, but we're gonna like push this product in a way that it's gonna actually be a marketing expense for us. It's content that gets our name out there in a way that's like infiltrates and subverts and has Meow brand kind of be this like just weird thing out in the world, and it totally worked. Here's how I think about it. We're a B corporation, and I guess like I have, you know, I'm up here, I have to stand for this in a big way. Like, marketing dollars, sponsorship dollars, programmings, activities, who you are as a company, who you are as a brand, like, people think about those things as separate. Like, here's our philanthropy bucket, here's our marketing bucket, here's our programming bucket, you know, here's what we actually do as a company. And it's like, that's so disingenuous. It's incredibly disingenuous. The best system here is to just integrate all of these. Like, your marketing spend should be your social impact spend. It should be your philanthropy spend. Like, and that should be your programming. It should also be what you're about, you know? Like, selling widget over here and then like having philanthropy over here that has nothing to do with it. It's like, well, you know that you're spending the majority of your money and time on widget, you know? And like, stand for something. Like, stand for something. And that's not just me being preachy, like that's a whole new generation of consumers that are gonna demand it of you. Because there's too much stuff out in the world right now. There's too many products. There's too many choices. And the new consumer is gonna demand purpose behind what it is that you do. So I wanna kind of give an example. I'm gonna play a video of a campaign that we put money behind and what I consider to be marketing. Back in 2016, there was a fire in San Francisco, in Oakland, called the Ghost Ship Fire. And it was a DIY space that looked a lot like a space that Meow Wolf was in back in the day. Grungy art warehouse and not up to code. And like 20 plus people died in that fire. After that happened, we ended up kind of launching this campaign to support DIY spaces around the country.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
DIY culture kind of saved my life.
I feel like that invigorates the city.
It gives artists a chance to contribute to the community.
And all the artists are really weird and fun to hang out with.
I love DIY so damn much.
It is so important that we have artists and ideas and these think tanks where our community can really come together.
These spaces are just incubators for culture.
DIY spaces just end up filling the holes for all of those people that kind of get left out of the culture.
Anybody and everybody can just come here, be themselves, figure out who that is, figure out themselves.
I feel all the feels about Zephyr. Without them, we couldn't have done this play at all. Oh yeah, baby. Come on in.
To me, it's not a mohawk and a no effects shirt. It's like really doing something for your community.
Breaking news in the warehouse fire investigation in Oakland as the death toll continues to rise.
The fire ripped through a converted warehouse on 31st Avenue and East 13th Street during an electronic dance music party on Friday night. At least 33 people are now confirmed dead.
In 2016, there was a fire at a DIY art space called Ghost Ship.
They should have had that place boarded up.
Oh, you should have done this. It's like, don't you think we feel how many people died in our home?
Not only were there individuals who died in that fire that we had strong connections to, but it was just like, it just looked like a huss.
The warehouse that burned is far from the only one in Oakland that does not have proper permits.
DIY spaces don't have a consistent revenue stream, and they usually don't have the bandwidth to get up to these codes.
I remember seeing other venues starting to get shut down.
Policemen and firemen and city officials across the country are working hand in hand with internet trolls to locate DIY spaces and trying to shut them down.
We cut out an extra fire exit, so there's 2 exits. We did all this like about a week before we ended up getting shut down. So we did like a little town hall style meeting.
I had some major bouts with depression. One of the few places I could go to was the Flex.
Because of the Flex, it motivated me to learn a new skill.
This is your community. Keep it going, keep it strong.
It's a huge barrier that the city views the spaces as like a threat and not an asset.
Anytime you take away a productive, creative situation for a growing soul or mind, you got crime.
You know, if people are going to be doing stuff, creative stuff, and giving something to the culture and community that they live in, they deserve support.
The DIY Fund was created to support DIY entities who need help staying alive.
Our goal is to give over $250,000 to DIY art spaces across the country, but we need your help to get there.
Instead of telling us, you can't do this, it's not safe, help us make this safe. Meow has gotten help, so they're giving back, and that's why we're doing too. We're giving back to our community.
So we traveled around to 32 different states and sent a video crew to capture a bunch of this footage and to meet with these groups. This is all coming out of what you normally might say is your philanthropy budget or your social impact budget, but it came out of our marketing budget. And we went around and created this fund, made this video, created the website, launched it, got a ton of earned media because of the work that we were doing, because newspapers will cover this work, right? The work is tied to who we are as a company. It's not separate. Like, we want to bring creativity to the world. So it fits perfectly with what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. And then we take this piece of media, all of these different pieces of news media, the earned media that we don't pay $1 for, we take that earned media and we then share it on social media. And what shares better than anything else on social media? Not advertising, it's not a commercial, it's not video, it's not a picture. What shares better than anything on social media is legit earned media. It's legit newspaper articles. That shares better than anything. People are so used to seeing BS news articles that the moment they see something from a real news agency that has some real substance to it, you'll get a ton of organic traffic out of it. So then we then pump in marketing budget into that post on Facebook or Instagram, and we blast that out to a targeted audience. We reach 1 million people for $10,000. And that 1 million people are engaging with the work, and they care about it. And it's people who actually care about creative spaces, and it's the exact audience that we want to try to hit. So to kind of give you a sense, the content itself costs us $25,000. We then put in $100,000 into the campaign just out of our own money to push towards DIY spaces. It costs about $5,000 for the PR and marketing, and we spent $10,000 on Facebook for our ad buy, a total of $140,000. That campaign got us, in total, across all of the news agencies, Facebook, all that, 10 million impressions, 2 million direct engagements. We then raised $150,000 of money into a 501c3 that then went on top of the $100,000 we put in. So we actually paid for the campaign just out of donations itself, and we funded 106 spaces in 35 states. To a direct audience, a core audience that cares about our product and our business. Or you can spend $4 million a year for this. Like, imagine what you could do with your $4 million sponsorship. Imagine what kind of good you could do in the world, you know? And how people would actually perceive your company. If you spent your $4 million of ad placement on the side of a stadium and actually worked with the community, spent that $4 million on programming, and then pushed it out on Facebook to that community directly. It's not about eyeballs anymore. Like, number of eyeballs, it's not about number of eyeballs. Because this is what numbers of eyeballs see. This is glazed over numbers of eyeballs. What it's about is quality of eyeballs. People are smart. Kids are really smart. Kids who grow up in the internet age are hyper smart. You can't advertise at them like you advertise at Gen X. You're not going to be able to do it. You have to give them content that they care about and that's meaningful. And so it's not about number of eyeballs, it's about quality of eyeballs and what it is that they're seeing. So I'll end it here, just kind of talking about authenticity. Like in 2019, what's most authentic to us is our survival. Like, it's becoming clear that our survival is at stake. Like, we can be in this room and we can be talking about customer acquisition and converting customers into revenue and making sure our bottom line hits. But guess what? 50 years from now, we're not gonna exist. Like, business won't exist. That's real. Like, that's authentic. And it's authentic to every single one of our customers. They care about this because they're waking up to news on a daily basis that tells them that 50 years from now, business ain't going to matter. The economy is not going to exist. So I challenge everybody in the room, all businesses here, all marketing dollars, all philanthropic dollars, to consider this and to consider putting your brand and your company and your logo, your sponsorship behind something that really, truly means something. Thank you.